Hello students, myself Maitri Dave and today we are going to learn about the thermal insulation. So let us begin our today's lecture. So basically let me give you the idea about the introduction of this thermal insulation. When there is difference in temperature of inside of a building and outside temperature, heat transfer takes place from areas of higher temperature to the lower temperature, right? So that is the case where the thermal insulation concept will come in picture. When I talk about the cold regions, when the buildings are internally heated, where outside temperature is very cool, it is necessary to check this heat loss from the building. Similarly, in the very hot regions, when buildings are internally cooled and outside atmosphere is unbearably warm, it is essential to check the entry of heat into the building. Thermal insulation is used to indicate the construction or provisions by way of which transmission of heat from or in the room is retarded. The aim of thermal insulation is to minimize the transfer of the heat between the outside and the inside of the building, right? So that is the main concept of this thermal insulation. Now, let me give you the idea about the advantages of the thermal insulation. So here, when I talk about the comfort, that thermal insulation keeps the room cool in summer and hot in winter. This results in comfortable living, right? Now, let me talk about the fuel saving. Because since heat transfer is minimized due to thermal insulation, less fuel is required to maintain the desired temperature in the room. Next is the prevention of consideration. It means use of thermal insulating material inside a room results in prevention of consideration on interior walls and the ceilings, right? So we can say like that. Next is the prevention of freezing and heat loss. It means use of thermal insulating materials prevents the freezing of water taps in extreme winter and heat loss in case of hot water system. So these all are the advantages. Now let me give you idea about some materials which are specifically used for thermal insulation. So here the first one is the slab or block insulation. Second one is the blanket insulation. Then the third one is the loose fill insulation. Fourth one is the bed insulating material. Fifth one is the insulating boards. Sixth one is the reflective sheet materials. Seventh one is the lightweight materials. Let's discuss all one by one. So here the first one is the slab block insulation. So the blocks are made of mineral wool, corkboard, cellular glass and cellular rubber, or we can say the of sawdust. These are fixed to the walls and the roofs to prevent heat loss and maintains required temperature. These boards are available in 16 by 120 centimeter or more area with 2.5 centimeter thickness as shown in this figure, right? So you get the idea of the slab or the block insulation. Now let us talk about the second type, which is all about the blanket insulation. So blanket insulation materials are available in blanket shape or like paper rolls which are directly sprayed over the wall or the ceilings. They are flexible and having a thickness of about 12 to 80 mm. These blankets are made of animal hair or cotton or wood fibers, right? You can see the clear picture of this blanket insulation. Now let us move to the third one, which is all about loose fill insulation. So stirred space is provided in wall where windows and doors are to be provided. In that studding space of wall, loose fill of some insulating material is provided. The materials are rock wool, slag wool, wood fiber wool and the cellulose. Here you can see the image of this kind of loose fill insulation material. Now let us move to the fourth one, which is all about bed insulating material. So these are also available as blanket rolls, but bed insulating rolls are having more thickness than the blanket type material. These are also sprayed over the walls or the ceilings. Here you can see the image of this kind of bed insulating material having a good thickness, right? Now let us move to the fifth one, which is all about insulating boards. So insulating boards are made from the pulp of wood, can or other materials. This pulp is pressed hard with some stress at suitable temperature to make it as a solid boards. They are available in many sizes in the market. These are generally provided for interior lining of walls as well as for partition walls as shown in this figure, right? Now let us move to the sixth one, which is all about the reflective sheet material. So reflective sheet materials like aluminum sheets or the gypsum boards or the steel sheet materials will have more reflectivity and low emissivity. So these materials are having high heat resistance. The heat gets reduced when solar energy strikes and gets reflected. These are fixed outside of the structure to stop the heat entrance into the building. Here you can see a clear image of this reflective sheet materials. Now let us talk about the last material, the seventh one, which is all about lightweight materials. So concrete will have more heat resistance if it is made of lightweight aggregates like blast furnace slag, or we can say some bond clay aggregate or some vermiculite. So these are the examples when we reduce the size of aggregate and having a lightweight concrete function, right? So this is the example of lightweight material. So these all are the example of the different materials which are used for a thermal insulation purpose. Now, how to choose a material for particular work? So choice of insulating material is very important. So here we can say it generally depends on cost of materials, area to be covered, then the standard of insulation required, coat of heating or cooling, or we can say this material should have some following properties so we can choose it very easily. So the first property is it should have high thermal resistance or it should have reasonably fireproof. It should be insect proof. It should be durable. It should be non-absorbent of moisture. It should be cheaper and it should be readily available. So these all are the properties which make us feel that which material we have to go for, right? So these are the criteria. Now let us talk about some of the general methods of thermal insulation. So apart from providing thermal insulating material on walls, roof, doors, etc., thermal insulation can also be achieved by following methods, where we can say there are different methods in which the first one is by orientation. So the orientation of a building with respect to the sun has a very important thing on its thermal behavior. For optimum orientation, there are usually conflicting requirements. Minimum transfer of solar heat is desired during the day in summer, while heating of room by solar heat is required during the winter. That is by orientation method. Now let us talk about the second method, by shading. While shading of roof brings down the surface temperature, it is very difficult to achieve this effect in practice, especially when the altitude angle of the sun is quite high during the period of peak heat gain in afternoons between 11 to 15 hours. Raising the parapet wall can help only when the altitude angle of the sun is low, but the cost may not be commensurate with the effect obtained, right? So that is the concept of shading. Now let me give you idea about the last method, which is by proper height of ceiling. The heat gets absorbed by the ceiling and emitted downwards, that is into the building. But the point should be noted is the vertical gradient of radiation intensity is not significant beyond 1 to 1.3 meter. It means it can travel up to 1 to 1.3 meter downward from the ceiling. So provision of ceiling at 1 to 1.3 meter height from the height of occupant will reduce some heat loss. So that is the methods which we can use for thermal insulation, by orientation, by shading and by proper height of ceiling. Now when I talk about the thermal insulation for particularly roofs, then we can say that heat gain through roofs may be reduced by adopting following methods, where the first method is application of heat insulating materials. Heat insulating materials may be applied externally or internally to the roofs. In case of external application, heat insulating material may be laid over the roof but below a waterproof course. In case of internal application, heat insulating material may be fixed by adhesive or otherwise on the underside of roofs from within the roof. False ceiling of insulating materials may be provided below the roof with air gaps in between as shown in this figure. Here you can see the air gaps, right? So that is the concept of this thermal insulation in the roofs. For flat roofs, external insulation may also be done by arranging asbestos cement sheet or some corrugated galvanized iron sheet on brick as shown in the figure. Third method we can say shining and reflecting material may be fixed on the top of the roof. The fourth method can we say that roofs may be flooded with water in the form of sprays or otherwise so that the loss due to the evaporation may be compensated by makeup of arrangement. Fifth method where we can say that roofs may be whitewashed begin onset of each summer. And lastly, the sixth one, the top exposed surface of roof may be covered by 2.5 centimeter thick layer of coconut peach cement concrete. Such a concrete is prepared by mixing coconut peach with cement and water, and after laying it is covered with an impermeable layer and then allowed to dry for 20 to 30 days. So that's it for the thermal insulation of roofs. Now let me talk about the thermal insulation of exposed walls. So heat insulation of exposed wall may be achieved by the following ways. Well, the first one says the thickness of wall may be increased. The cavity wall construction may be adopted for external walls. The wall may be constructed out of suitable heat insulating material provided structural requirements are met. Heat insulating material may be fixed on the inside or outside of the exposed wall in such a way that the value of overall thermal transmittance is brought within a desired limits. In the case of external applications, overall waterproofing is essential. Light colored whitewash or distemper may be applied on the exposed side of the wall. So here you can see a clear image, right? Now let me give you idea about some of the thermal insulation of exposed doors and windows. So in dealing with the heat insulation of exposed doors and windows, suitable methods should be adopted. Where different methods are there in which the first one is the reduction of incidence of solar heat. It means these may be achieved by the following means. First one is the external shading. It means such as lowered shutter, sun breakers, chajjas should be there. And second is the internal shading, such as curtains and the Venetian blinds. Now, when I talk about the second method, it means reduction of heat transmission. When glazed windows and doors are provided, reduction of the heat transmission may be achieved by providing insulating glass or double glass with airspace or by any other suitable means. So that's it for this thermal insulation of exposed doors and window. I hope you understand all the topics discussed in this lecture. Thank you for watching. See you soon in the next lecture.